Who do you trust? Who can you trust? That's today's discussion. My name is Steve, and this is Awake with Steve, where I talk about the things that keep me awake at night. Usually anxieties of one sort or another, although it can also be fun little ideas that I'm toying with. So today's topic, who do you trust? If you watched last week, my last episode, you got to see me actually melt down in lieu of looking for information. You got to see how my mind works to basically not being attentive to what's causing me anxieties. I just kind of go off in all kinds of different directions. So the question that I have now is, who do you trust? In other areas of my life, I have trusted authorities. There are people or sources of information that, for the most part, I think are going to be actually trustworthy. They know what they're talking about. They have good sources. I know when they're really strong suits are being played, when they're actually working with their resources really well. And I usually have some idea of their weak points. Okay. But a little history first, because there was a time back in the 1800s when a term that was thrown around about for newspapers was yellow rags. Basically, newspapers were getting into the headlines, whatever they thought would cause people to buy them a newspaper. Sound familiar, huh? Net result being all kinds of ludicrous ideas, untruths were being spread by newspapers. Oh, buy mine and find out what this politician did, or buy mine and buy this other one, and it'll tell you about this movie star, or theater star in that time. Yeah, kind of sounds like today's world. What happened with that stuff is that along came radio, television, and they required radio frequencies, part of the radio frequency spectrum to broadcast their messages out. And one of the problems they quickly ran into is whoever had the most powerful transmitter ruled within that distance. They could override anybody who was within reach of their signal. And with that, I think everybody pretty much agreed maybe the federal government ought to step in and regulate that. Who has access to those parts of the spectrum and how much power they can radiate? Of course, with federal oversight came federal regulations. That's where we got this idea that news programs are supposed to be reasonably trustworthy, fair and balanced, and generally a trusted resource. Okay, that's where we got, in my younger days, there was the Huntley-Brinkley report, Walter Cronkite, very trustworthy people, at least on the face of it. And I'm not going to question it. Walter Cronkite's a freaking icon to older generations. And then things changed. The internet came along, and fair and balanced news couldn't keep up with all of the rumors flying around on places like YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. So they started pushing a little bit to get a little bit more, I don't want to say racy, but more controversial. And then along came a few Supreme Court rulings that basically said the government couldn't regulate what news programs said. And we're off to the races. Now, we're back to the whatever it takes to get eyeballs on my channel, my program. That's the important thing. What used to be trusted news stations can't compete with rampant misinformation with the bad news disasters. Everything's a freaking disaster. Everything's a genocide. Everything's fair and balanced doesn't work like that. And fair and balanced can't keep up with those at a high rate of speed. So fair and balanced went away. And now it's left up to individuals to seek out their own sources of trusted information. And the thing about trusted information is it's not trusted all the time, or at least not in my experience. I have trusted sources that I trust on some information, but not on others. One example in the news world is Al Jazeera. They actually have their own reporters, own editors. Not a lot of news organizations have that anymore. And there are other organizations which look at the fairness and the accuracy of news organizations. And they kind of sort of agreed that Al Jazeera is a reasonably good source of information, as long as it does not include, as long as it's not information on the Middle East. Al Jazeera, being stationed in the Middle East, owned by Middle Eastern people, might get, and probably will get, a little biased as to what's going on there. They will have their own take on it. Whereas in the rest of the world, so far so good. Again, it's a source of trusted information. A source of trusted information in particular areas. And usually backed up by other sources. And one of the reasons that I pick trusted sources of information over doing the original research into digging into these topics of my train wrecks is, why is this train wreck occurring, and how can we stop it? How can we fix it? And it's not a simple issue. This is why I have multiple sources of trusted information in different areas. I don't have time to go and keep up with all of the original research from, do the ground up study to understand everything about it. There's a couple areas where I've done a fair amount of research in that, and I've got a pretty good understanding of what's going on. And there are other areas where I don't. In my last episode, I believe the trigger was microplastics in the environment. It's in the headlines a lot these days, or at least I see it a lot. How bad are they? Don't know. On the one hand, we've got people saying they'll just pass right through your system. You ingest them, you drink in your drinking water, your food, it just passes through your system. No problems. It does this with other animals too, except when it doesn't. You've got the horrific photos of birds who have decayed and their stomachs are full of plastic particles. I believe there's a report on whales, some whales having issues with not getting enough nutrients into their system because their digestive system is getting clogged up with plastic particles. So they don't always just pass through your system. And then on the other side of the argument, you've got people who say, look, the chemicals in plastics, they affect our hormones. It's been proven in drug studies and animal studies, and especially hormones, and what really hits the media fast is estrogen and testosterone. They're affecting our ability to reproduce. A lot of things are doing that. Maybe not, I don't know. What do reasonable studies actually say? You can prove that something affects an animal in laboratory studies, but how does that relate to human beings? Different animals have reasonably good models of different parts of the human physiology. So I don't know enough about that. So I need to find some trusted sources in that. Which is probably going to be my next project. And all of my train wrecks are like that. They're not, just stop it and everything's going to be wonderful. It's like, okay, we can stop the sources, maybe. Depends where they come from. Then how do we clean it up? And then how bad is it, really? Do we stop everything and get it cleaned up and out of the system now? Or can we do it more gradually? And then there's the political decision-making involved, but that's a whole nother bailiwick. So it's kind of a discussion on where I've gone after my meltdown in the last episode. Hopefully I'll never put another episode up like that. That's generally a pretty private part that I go through and then find my trusted sources or start looking for trusted sources. So with that, I think I've talked about enough here. If I keep going on, I'm going to ramble a whole lot more. So at the end here, you've got a link to my prior episode if you want to see that, and also my introduction. And we'll see what the next episode brings. See ya.